I was at a skin seminar years ago. One of the doctors got up to talk about how the microbiome on the skin actually they found has a connection to the microbiome in the gut. Like there is a neurological connection. So when we look at something like hand sanitizers, when we look at something like toxic soaps, what we don't realize is we're destroying that microbiome, which is a part of the protective barrier. And that is also going the other way where it's affecting the gut. So talk just so everybody understands, because I've been saying for the last 3 years, like all this hand sanitizer is going to have a massively negative effect because people are lathering themselves in it. Why is that bad?
It's kind of like an antibiotic topically, right? You're killing all good and bad. It's just like if you spray the lawn. I always love using grass for an example with the microbiome. So if you spray the grass and the weeds dead, what grows back first? Weeds. They're opportunistic. And that is exactly that. It's so funny how we are so much like nature. We are at a direct mirror. So the best way to understand ourselves is to look at what's going on around you.
Yeah. And on that topic, I just want to say, as women, there's a reason we have a 28 to 30 day cycle. There's another part of nature that has that same cycle, and it's waxing and waning. You know, it's like we have lost that connection. You are spot on. We are so connected to nature.
We are so connected. So if you kill everything, the opportunistic stuff will grow back. On the note of like antibiotics, for example, when you kill all the bacteria, the fungus will have a party, right? When you kill everything on the skin, the alcohol's kind of killing everything to our knowledge, you know, either one of those can grow back. And so what we do have positive and not as good bacteria, no matter what. It's just that we want to have more good bacteria than bad, right? Because otherwise the weeds overpower the grass. And so what happens if I'm going to use dandelions, you know, we can have all of our feelings about dandelions, but we understand them. So what happens with weeds? They steal the nutrients. So they make it hard for people to heal. They slow down healing time. So relevant to your skin, right? Because you'll notice like, oh, I break my skin and it's like, it takes forever to heal. That is like really poor nutrient status. So the weeds will steal the nutrients. They give off their own toxins. So those endotoxins, they got to go somewhere. It's like increasing the trash output, right? And so if you have a bunch of people over and you're increasing all the trash, you're not taking out the trash as much, it's got to go somewhere. And the skin's a real safe place for it to show up. So back to the weeds, they steal the nutrients, and then they also impair digestion. And so this does not always look like, oh, I have all these digestive symptoms. But when you have things on the skin, let's say someone eats something and they see some symptom or they see their skin flare. That's a symptom of poor digestion. That's what that is. So you're not digesting that particular food or protein. Undigested matter is being fed to the dandelions. They love that kind of food. The weeds love that. The dysbiotic bacteria love that. And then they thrive. And then it's like this self-replicating process, or like it's like a hamster wheel that just continues to feed itself. So it's so tricky for people when they eat a food and they see a reaction. And I would boil that down to poor digestion, which is, I think, that's a real epidemic, because all of our digestive adequacy, or our stomach acid, our bile, our digestive enzymes are all suppressed under stressful things, right? So what happens is we have stress, we dump minerals, all of those things are pieces of how we digest. So I went off on a bit of a tangent, and I should get to the try.
But so what I'm hearing on the barrier is it's a two-way street. It's like, you know, the gut barrier and the skin barrier. Like you got to protect the gut barrier, you got to protect the skin barrier. So, but I love that where you're going with eczema also being an internal challenge and an external challenge. So is there something, what have you found in all of your research? Have you found anything that we can do to protect that external skin barrier so we don't get a staph infection leading to eczema?
So I think it depends on where you are in your healing journey. My friend who works with cancer, she's like, well, are you in the middle of treating it or are you post? You know, so but if you're post,
like I don't have eczema, but I always want to just protect my skin barrier.
Okay, perfect. That's great. So some integrative dermatologist, his name is Raja Sivamani. I love what he says. He says, don't over soap, wash the pits, right? And so wash the areas that need to be washed and don't soap up everything else. So kind of to your point earlier, when you use microbiota disrupting soaps, so the stuff with like essentially the antimicrobial soaps, not that you should be really using those in the shower, but if you use those everywhere, you're disrupting your microbiome and you could be creating a problem that you would not otherwise have. That's one thing, right? The next thing is, I think we should step back and say, am I a really dry skin profile? Am I using a lot of lotions, etc.? I like to hydrate from the inside. I like to make sure I'm like, that's a real nerdy thing to say. Like, oh, I've got dry skin. I should go work on my fatty acid status instead of slathering lotion on the outside.
I'm geeking out on what you're saying, so no worries.
So I think that there are times like, and I will preface this by saying like, I'm not not an esthetician, but when the seasons change, it's okay to change your topical care products too. So right now we're in the winter at the time of this recording. So I would say lean more into the oils, right? Like topical oils. I do not mean coconut oil. Coconut oil has, and we could go to bat about this. This comes from a microbiologist that I respect, where if you put coconut oil on your skin really consistently, you're also disrupting the topical microbiome because it's got really awesome antifungal properties. So it may have helped your kid's cradle cap, which is a fungal origin typically, right? It's got some antifungal properties, but it's not the oil that you typically want to use topically. I like things that I've seen work really nicely, or jojoba oil is really a nice one. If you can get something that's got some, thinking of I don't feel like it's chamomile, but there are some things that are mixed up, and kind of like you, like we try things and we're like, oh, I really like how that works on my skin, right? So we use, like, I always say, start with the most basic of things, right? Like the lesser or the simpler products, and expand from there. One mistake I would say that happens when people have eczema is, and this happens to all of us and it happens in other conditions, is we end up with a graveyard of stuff, right? Because we're like, oh, I'm itching in the middle of the night. I get up and put like anything on. And one thing I would encourage when you're working on topical skin barrier stuff is to use something for a bit of a prescribed time, maybe like anywhere from 3 days to 2 weeks, and then switch it up. Because what can happen with this skin and gut connection, and there's a lot we can say about that, right? So if it heals the tissue, it heals the tissue. It helps heal the skin tissue. It helps heal the gut lining tissue. In general, if you've got eczema, if you're changing things, yes. If you, like with kids, you use lotions with oatmeal. And so sometimes people will start reacting to that because they've got leaky skin. And so they've got tight gap junctions in the skin as well. And so it gets in there. And then the body, when you start using something all the time, you've got permeability, you can start to have a reaction to it. So this is a thought or a reason you might want to change things up.
So what I heard is that you got to get to know your skin type. You got to look at the seasons, and you got to find something natural that works for you.